Hey there. Thank you for joining me here at the end of 2024, where I'm going to be going over my favorite games that came out over the last year. That's right. As always, it's time for us to do our top 10 of the year, this time for 2024. We've done a ton of these, so let's get right to it. So this year, I'm going to add something, and that is actually a sort of side list or just letting you guys know of maybe some of my favorite digital either adaptations or video games. This is designed more for either, like I said, adaptations in the digital space, or maybe just a video game that's so obviously heavily pulls from board games and board game mechanics. Last year, I mentioned sort of in my biggest misses a number 0 in terms of Baldur's Gate 3, and this is the kind of place where I'd put it. The reason I feel like it might be separate rather than just including these items in my top 10 list is some of these, it's much harder to compare them in a top 10 because, just the way that video and digital things work versus physically playing a board or card game. So I'm for now going to separate them. If you guys feel like these should have been included in the top 10, let me know. And in the future, that's how it's going to be. But without further ado, I have 2 games that I feel like are worth mentioning for you to check out in the digital space. The first one is the Codenames app. I've already done a review about it and how much I love it. In particular, this is an app if you plan whether you have a game and you want to make a digital version, or if you've been hired to make a digital version of a board game, that you should really look at this app as sort of a way for you to make it more than just simply a version of the game that you can play with a screen. You see, I feel the best way to make a strong digital version of a board game is either A, it has to just stand out in a huge way by having a lot of games, that's your board game arena style kind of thing, or B, it has to be more than simply just what the game is offered in the physical box. Now, a lot of times I think that's all a lot of these do. Maybe they add some voice lines and stuff and some cute animations, but really you're just playing the game. I really feel like the Codenames app went above and beyond and really feels much more like a video game. It has all this interesting mechanics and ways you can actually build up special powers and gain collection with keys. It has achievements, which that is usually one thing that is included in the others, but with all the other stuff, it's actually more fun to hunt those down. Game modes that you could only play in a digital space versus the physical space. Either way, I think it is a great addition to the world of tabletop gaming in the app space. And, one other thing, this game, as well as the next one I'm going to talk about, is a one-time purchase. No microtransactions. That's not just, everything should be like, that's just something you'd want. So definitely worth checking out. The other one was something that I know a lot more video game players know, but I was surprised that when I talked about it at conventions, it seemed to be more 50-50 among board gamers. And that's Balatro. This is a roguelike deck building poker game. So you are playing hands like in poker, but you're going to be able to modify your deck like any deck builder. You can make it all kings, queens, a certain suit. There's also going to be getting Joker cards, which give you special powers. It is just such a great way to take the classic poker deck, which we may talk about a little bit later, and adding a lot more to it. And I cannot recommend any more unless you are really afraid of losing a lot of time, because you will lose a lot of time to, both of these. And Balatro right now is on all the ways you can play anything mobile, Switch, Steam Deck as an app now. So plenty of ways for you to play on the go, which I think is the best way, at least personally, to play the game. Both of these, I think, are fantastic for board gamers. One is, as I said, a great way to adapt a physical board game into the digital space. The other one started off as a video game, but it's using deck building and poker cards, classics, for the tabletop. So I definitely recommend you check out both of these games. But with those out of the way, let's actually get to the top 10. Number 10. Starting at number 10, we've got Super Snipers. This is a game in which you will either be playing solo or dueling an opponent as snipers trying to take out the other player before they take you out. This is done by using the polyanimos, I always forget the word, the Tetris-like pieces. In order to place them on little puzzle sheets, first you need to find out which of the 3 areas they're hiding, and then you're going to zoom in and try to isolate them from innocent bystanders before you're able to take the shot. Now, what really makes this game stand out and worthy to be on the list is the time mode. When we first played it, they tell you to not use the time mode, obviously, where basically you both place a piece at the same time, simultaneous turns, repeat the process until someone has been able to take the shot, reset, and do this until someone takes 3 shots, and that's when you are taken out. The time mode, however, makes it so you now have a sand timer. And once you place your piece, as long as there's sand in the timer, it's about 10 seconds, you have to wait, but you don't care what your opponent's doing. As soon as your timer goes out, you can flip it and you can keep going, meaning there's a lot more pressure. You're not both going at the same pace. You could try and find them much quicker because you just are just placing pieces on the board, not trying to really puzzle out the perfect fit. And the powers that they give you that allow you to either like swap from the rows, move a puzzle piece, change the color or something, are much more powerful in the time mode because that's when you're going to make maybe not the most perfect moves. And that's when you wish, oh, I need to move this around now. Oh, wait, I can get that power. I can use it then. And when that was happening, it became so much fun. The pressure of trying to solve this puzzle as quickly as you can. You're surrounding. I'm like, oh, I can almost do this. And all of a sudden your opponent goes, I'm taking the shot. And you're like, no, I was so close. And that tension just was so much fun for me. This game is a little rough around the corners, but I still think it adds such a great experience for anyone who loves puzzle games and also maybe wants something that adds a bit more of a pressure and not as just slowly taking your time. But like I said, it does have that option. You don't have to use the timers. But for me personally, it's that pressure from the timers that makes this worthy of being on the top 10 list. Number 9. Coming in at number 9, we've got Harmonies. This one was actually a bit of a surprise for me, and it sounds like for everyone else. But when I last checked, it was actually the highest rated game on BoardGameGeek in terms of releases in 2024, if you look at their regular geek ranking. This is a pattern game in which you are trying to make these perfect environments for animal cards, as well as trying to just score the land itself, as certain things like rivers want to be in a long road, depending on which side of the tile you're using. The fields want to be in just next to one other, but you want to try and spread them out a bit more, things like that. And it just is surprising on how much you're trying to, all right, I can do this pattern, I can fit this here and try to do so much. And yet, this game easily plays in like 30 or less minutes, depending on how everyone else is going. It's always a surprise how quick it is, even though I feel like I'm really like, it's definitely still brain burning, but just quick enough that it doesn't feel like it burns you out for being a long game. If you like pattern recognition in any other way or puzzle things, but want something a bit quicker, I think Harmonies will, and has for a lot of people, fill that space. Number 8. At number 8 is probably no surprise to a lot of people. I tend to put TCGs on here. I tend to like TCGs. I like card games. I like building the decks. I'm terrible at piloting them, but I have fun with it still. And this is going to the newest one that came out at the beginning of this year, Star Wars Unlimited. This is, well, the Star Wars trading card game. And what I really love about this is, at least so far, I feel like that the card game itself hasn't sacrificed mechanics for theme. I feel a lot of the themed card games that are out right now, either it's at the start or eventually will start to be like, well, we're just going to print cards that work really well for protagonist A. And it slowly becomes just really boring, not in the sense that everyone's playing the strong cards, but like if you know the property but not the card game, you can almost name what's in there. Like if Star Wars did this, would be like, all right, let me guess. You're running Luke Skywalker, so you have Obi-Wan, lightsaber, and X-Wing, and Yoda. And people be like, yeah, that's all the cards for Luke. But here, instead, when you run a Luke deck, like, oh, well, he paired it with that base. So is he doing a full blue control deck? Or is he now with yellow? Is he doing some kind of tricky deck? Red, like weird blue, red aggro. And the cards themselves are designed with mechanics in mind so that every time you are looking at the newest set, you can still build around like Luke Skywalker or Mandalorians, like some kind of creature type, so to speak. But I still think you're going to be looking and interested in most of the cards rather than not caring unless literally Luke Skywalker appears in the artwork. And of course, showing that they are going all over the Star Wars IP, not just focusing on the main movies. So you'll be able to see maybe some of your favorite characters from some of the less well-known stories. Either way, I think this is a great card game, not just for the Star Wars fans, but honestly, just for anyone who does enjoy TCGs. Number 7. When I make this list, I put out the games that I played, and I sort of just go through a process like, oh yeah, not this one, not this one, then this one, slowly culling it down until I have the 10 or so games, sometimes a little bit more if there's like a nominee kind of thing. And then, I move them around until I feel like, yeah, this is what it is. This is what I like. And because that, I don't really look at the numbers at the end. This is not scripted, if you probably can't tell from all the cuts and just the way I talk. And the reason I say all that is that my number 7, I did not mean to place here, but it fits perfectly. And that's because it is Flip 7. This is the push your luck game in which you're trying to hit a score cap by flipping over cards, usually numbered cards, but there are special ones. Now, the idea is you go bust or you don't get the score if you flip 2 of the same number. So if you flip a 12 and then another 12 comes out, well, you're done. The number of cards in the deck are going to be based on the number. So there are 12 12s, 11 11, so on and so forth. And when I play this game, I just have so much fun at the table seeing how far people push and just seeing people are like, hit me with another one. It's one of those games that just makes stories with everyone. And it can fit a lot of people too, which is really nice. And the fact that there are special ability cards, some of them which could be sometimes beneficial to use on yourself rather than send it at an opponent, means that there's always so much more interesting going on outside of just, all right, what is number card coming out? And anytime that comes out, it makes more excitement like, oh, what did they get? All right, you should send it that way. Don't send it at me. Don't look at me. Go to that person. And overall, it's just one of those games that is simple, but will always have a lot of energy and excitement at the table, which I really do love. Number 6. So my number 6 game is, I think, going to be my most controversial because for a lot of people, they're going to probably put it in their top 3. But I feel, let me explain, that the fact that it made it this high on my list is actually just showing how crazy this game is. And that is Leaders Arcs. Arcs is the most recent game from the publishers of Root. And over the last few years, I feel like I've realized I am not their target audience. I don't like as aggressive games, and Arcs is in no question a very aggressive game. And when we first started playing it, I remember thinking like, oh, I'm not going to like this. I'm not going to have a great time, but I'll play through it. I know a lot of people here like it. But since playing it, honestly, outside of literally the first round, when we're learning the game, and we all agree we were not playing it very well, every time I've played it, it has been more enjoyable. Now, it is still extremely draining on me. This is a game I feel like I got to know it's coming, and it's not one that you're like, what do we play? Well, let's just play a game of Arcs. It's something I need setup time for. But I feel that the game itself still does so many great things that a hater like me still can't help but smile while playing it. All the mechanical and design choices I absolutely love. The way that when you draw a hand of cards, maybe you don't get the action you want. I actually feel like it does such a clever and great job with the way the trick taking works is that technically every hand is terrible while also good because you could always do something. It's really more about playing against your opponents rather than what luck has dealt you in your hand. Now, sometimes that's for better, for worse. I think that's probably my biggest problem is the game really will show if people are on different skill levels. And that just means it's something you just have to prep for. And I think that's why also, at least all the negative messages I've seen about are usually people skipping tutorials a little bit. You really need to sort of learn the rules slowly and let the game teach you rather than think oh, I've played board games before, I can go into this. Because the game, while really, it's going to be mean, you're going to hurt each other, it has so many fun ways to do it and to just offer in different strategies that, like I said, even though this is not in my top 3, every time I started making this list, it just kept moving up and up and up a slot. I can't help it. I think it is an amazing game, and I haven't even gotten into the campaign yet, which I'm actually really excited to try out. So, for those of you who love this game, please understand that the fact it's even here is a great testament, as it's obviously not one for me. And if you haven't heard of it, but you like the idea of very aggressive territory and sort of take that style kind of gameplay, I couldn't recommend this game more. Honestly, like I said, I'm betting this is near the top of almost every other person's list. So definitely give Arcs a try if it looks like something you would be interested in. Number 5. Now, on number 5, while Arks made it up so high despite being a game that usually wouldn't be made for me, this game I think made up so high a great deal because this is a game perfectly made for me. This is AEG's Let's Go to Japan. This is a game all about planning out your perfect trip. You'll be doing so by drawing cards either from a Tokyo or Kyoto deck and adding them to your itinerary. You'll be trying to match certain activities with certain days, and you don't want to take the train back and forth too often as that's going to be pretty exhausting. For me, I just love this whole setup and building something, in this case, building up your little trip. But one of the things I really love about this is that sometimes in games like these, you don't draw the cards you want. And they'll have some way maybe that you can get sort of like all right, take one coin instead. Something that's sort of like a small prize to, like, it's okay, but you really can't get anything out of what's in your hand. What works here is that instead of doing that, you're going to discard a card and draw one card face down, placing into any day. This will be saying taking a walk. Now, if you've ever gone on a vacation of any sorts or just been to a major city, sometimes you can probably just walk around and see what's there. And that's what the card represents. At the end, when you do scoring, you'll actually flip that card over and see what's there. You can decide to use that card as if you played it, or use the backside, which will just give you some energy and rewards like before. But the fact there's that randomness and the fact that you could still get something really good for you is really cool. The other thing I should have mentioned is this is a drafting game with those cards. And what I like is when you play a drafting game, if you don't know, usually you take a card, pass it to left or right, depending on the order, how the game works. Here it does have that. You'll change passing order. But when you take a card, usually the other card is going to be banked in someone's sort of like standby pile. And when that pile gets enough cards, that's when they're going to take it and look at it. So instead of just constantly seeing the same hand rotate around, you're slowly going to build up weirder hands and be like, oh yeah, I remember that card like a few rounds ago. And I really like that because I think it changed up how you choose to pass cards. You know, like the card's going to come back in a weird different way. And then when you do the discard for the walking around, that can change things up as well. So I think it does a great way to make the bad hands less punishing. It does drafting a lot more interesting. And the theme itself really connects with me. So that's why it's made it up to number 5 on my list. Number 4. At number 4, we actually have a Spiel des Jahres nominee, and that's Captain Flip. This game I actually first played at Gen Con physically. I've actually done quite a bit online on Board Game Arena. In this game, you'll be drawing your crewmates from a bag, and then you'll have to decide if you're going to take that tile as is or flip it over. If you do flip it, you have to keep it. And this is really interesting as each crewmate has different powers. Sometimes they can flip back over, so also you can start doing comboing with how you place them on your ship. But you're only placing like, I should have counted, but it's not like 10 or 12. It's not that many. So when you place them on your ship, it's this simple pattern in 5 rows, and like some rows are 3, I think is the smallest, and up to 4 or 5. So it's simple, but there's so much fun in deciding like, I don't want to flip it. I think I can get away with this here, but I can't take another gunner because certain ones don't want too many of this. Oh, but this can flip it back over. So I got the one-time bonus. I'm going to flip it over with this card. It just is a simple game that's a lot of fun. And I did play a lot digitally, but I do feel like this game works so much better physically. Just the feeling of pulling these tiles out of the bag, getting the coins. There's a map tile to move around that can give you more money, aka points. Overall, I can see why this game made it as a nominee for the Spiel des Jahres. Number 3. We are now in the top 3. And while Flip 7 got the serendipity of ending up at number 7, this one probably would have liked being at 2. That said, I still think it's a great game worthy of 3, and that is Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth. This is a Lord of the Rings variant of the Seven Wonders Duel, but it is not a simple reskin. It changes many things in order to feel a bit more thematic to the world of Lord of the Rings, including instead of a battle track, you now have a ring track. It's going to be the hobbits trying to get the ring to the volcano and destroy it before they're caught by the forces of evil. And there's now a board in which there are territories from the world of Lord of the Rings, in which you'll be moving armies as well as building castles, trying to defeat your opponent. And if you're able to hold all the territories at once, then you've automatically won the game. There is, of course, the classic building up of cards. There are the green cards that used to be signs. Here it's allies that can give you another alternate win condition. Overall, it just has a lot of the fun of Seven Wonders, without sacrificing the theme. In fact, I think the theme works even a little bit better. I think they did a great job with a lot of the things I still enjoy with Seven Wonders Duel, the way the card layout works, trying to pick cards for what's beneficial and also what would or would not reveal for your opponent. But also, like, I get that fun Lord of the Rings, the getting the ring chase and seeing how close. The board is like sometimes like, oh, he's getting close to that victory edition. I got to change this up somehow, which then maybe pushes me closer, and then he has to worry about that. Everything was this fun tug of war that was a lot more interesting and could swap really fast, especially with those round 3 cards. Overall, an amazing 2-player game that doesn't give up on either the theming for Lord of the Rings nor the amazing mechanics of Seven Wonders Duel. Number 2. My number 2 game I hinted at a little bit earlier with Balatro, but this is another poker-related one, and it's The Gang. Here, you're going to be working together playing poker instead of betting and trying to win money from everyone else. But instead of placing bets each round, what you're going to be doing is taking a chip representing how strong you think your hand is relative to everyone else. You think you have the weakest hand, take the 1-star chip. You have the strongest, take the highest star chip. However, what tends to happen in this game is since you can't say, I have a pair or I have a high king, you sort of just have to take the chip, and it becomes hilarious. People are all fighting over certain chips, whether they think their hand's the strongest or the weakest. And everyone's like, well, then I'm a 2. I'm like, well, no, I'm the 2-star. And it's just so much fun to play and see how it goes. And then at the very end, it's only the final bet that matters. So you use more of the earlier ones as like messaging tools. And I think that's nice because sometimes you don't know if your hand will be strong or not. And it really still keeps a lot of the tension of poker and also teaches you how to like understand how good a high card is. Like a lot of people will often have a high card and you have to understand, is this the better high card rather than a weaker high card? And of course, one thing that I think they added, which is almost mandatory, at least in my playthroughs, is that if you win or lose, you either get a boon or a penalty, sort of. The penalty, though, goes for if you win a round, when you get the help if you lost a round. Win 3 times, lose 3 times, that's how the game ends. And it's just one of those games you just like, once you play through, you're just like, all right, let's just do it again. Even though it's technically 3 rounds. Overall, one that I've absolutely adored and also pairs very well with the Balatro digital pick. Number 1. My number 1 pick is actually technically the game I played the most recent in comparison to when I first started playing each game. That's because I only got the game back at PAX Unplugged. But this is one I was so looking forward to, one I was really excited about, and I wanted to make sure I played it enough in order to be able to see if it would make it onto my top 10 list. And I was pretty certain it was. I just didn't know it was going to go all the way up to number 1. But it did. And that is SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. This is a game all about, well, exploring space, trying to learn more. You reach rival agencies, and the way you do so is that you have, well, a lot to do. You can send out probes who can fly through space and either start rotating around planets or even land on them or their moons. You can collect data from other places, try to get popular, get technological upgrades. And as the game progresses, you'll discover 2 different alien species. There are 5 in the box. I hope they make more. And while they don't drastically change the game in terms of simply like, oh, let's just change the rules now, this is like a dexterity game, it added so many fun, interesting scoring mechanics. One in particular is sort of I don't know if it counts as push your luck. I feel like there's another name for this mechanic that I can't think of. But whoever collects the most danger is going to actually lose points. So when everyone at the table, you're trying to guess how much danger they're going to play because you play these cards face down and you don't reveal to the end. So you're like, I think I can get away with 6 more danger. I think I should be safe. I don't know what other people are playing. They all add so many fun ways for you to mess around. The cards you play have different ways. They can be used for income. They can be discarded right away for an effect. They can be played for a stronger effect that costs money. There are just everything leads and feeds into something else. It's just one of those things that you're building all these different engines that all help each other, and you have so much fun because of that. It's one of those games I absolutely love that just everything just feeds upon itself, and then you just see all these crazy things happen. You feel so cool when you do this cool combo, and yet you only have 5 rounds. This, similar to ARX, also by CGE, has a very strict time limit. Now, if you've watched my ARX review, that was actually something I really didn't like about it. I felt like I didn't really have enough time Here, I don't think that's the same issue. And I think the reasoning for that is in Arcs, it's a deck builder, so sometimes you just draw a bad hand and that maybe doesn't do much for your round. I think here, as long as you know and you keep track of the time, you can usually get to do whatever you want to do or do something. In our first game, it was actually really funny. We didn't realize we're in the 5th round. We're like, we got one more round at right. Yeah. No, we don't. And everyone at the table thought they had one more round. And when we realized that, and this was, by the way, the end of the 5th round, like we're all close to the end. We're like, you would have passed and just like, get my resources, wait for next turn. And we're like, oh God, I gotta squeeze out as much as I can. So that did change everything, but no one, myself included, really felt like, oh, I didn't really get enough time to do things that I wanted. It really just like, oh, I should have kept track of things better. And then I maybe wouldn't have invested much in this if I knew if I somehow kept track of the time. And future games that have shown that. We've always felt like we've had, of course, we want to keep playing it more, but you never felt like that your strategy was always like kneecapped, I think, as by the time as I felt in Arnak. So because of that, we've all loved it. Even though it is a long playing game, we've never felt like we've actually been sitting there for that much time. And I think that's always one of the best things, especially for big, heavy games. If you don't feel that you've been sitting there for 3 hours or whatever the large game is, you know it's doing something right. And SETI does it right. And of course, I should mention a lot of it is very scientific. They have a little flavor text on all the cards. That's a big flavor win for me. It's one of the reasons I love Wingspan. So absolutely, it did everything right to win my heart and make it end up at number 1. That is my top 10 list, though, this year. Let me know your thoughts on all these, as well as the digital games. Do you think that these should have been on top list? Should Balatro try to see if it could dethrone SETI for number 1? I'd love to hear all your thoughts, as well as, of course, your top 10 in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. This has been a weird year. Usually this is the last video of the year. Of course, next year, as soon as January hits, I'll have my games I'm most excited for coming out, hopefully, in 2025. So keep an eye out for that. But for now, if you've been watching this far, thank you so much for joining me. I'll keep trying to provide you with board gaming content, and I hope you keep watching and enjoying it. But for now, thank you so much. I hope you have a good rest of the year. I'm Will, and this is Roll for Crit.